Hi everyone, I hope you are enjoying building the web page with React. And remember, if you have any challenge, you can reach out to any of the mentors around you. And okay, I want to add this to what we did in our last tutorial. Remember when we hosted our live site using GitHub pages and we had to add a little bit of format here and npm1 field. Okay, so if you make changes to your app, maybe you added something or if you make changes to your app, you would have to run npm, you would have to type npm run deploy on your terminal to deploy the changes you've made. That's after you have deployed the live site, okay, and you went back to your work and you make some changes to push the updates, the changes to the live site. You would have to run npm run deploy. Okay, it's very important you run that in your terminal to deploy the changes. Okay, so for today's tutorial, we're going to talk about few things. We're going to go a little bit into React to talk about some few things. We're going to talk about React components. Okay, first thing we talk about is going to be React components. And the second thing is going to be about React props. And the last thing will be about state. Right, so these are the three things you're going to talk about in our today's tutorial. And I'm just going to illustrate how JavaScript comes in React, how we can manipulate JavaScript, the logics and everything in React. Okay, so let's start with React components. I shouldn't have come in. Okay, so for the React components, remember we had our web page. We built our web page in the last tutorial, and we had the header where we have our logo, the main, and the footer where we have the Facebook icon. Okay, to explain React components. So component is like having different files, right? Having different files for different purpose, external file to handle different things, right? So that we don't have to really cluster everything in one file. So those individual files is what we call components, right? So I'm just going to explain that using what we have here. For example, the header. So I'll go to my source folder and I'm going to create a folder called component. So I'm going to have my component files. I'm going to create a React file there, component file, right? So the idea of component is we could have different Java functional components, right? Different components for different things, just like we have header now. I'm going to have an external file for header where I could handle everything for regarding header. Right, so I just use the React snippet. You can check the extension for that. You can search for React snippet and you can get the extension. But it just helps you to populate the necessary file, the necessary things you need for your functional component. Okay, so you're going to be seeing me doing a lot of that. Okay, so this is me setting up my header components because I want all the things that's going to concern header to be here, rather than having all of it clustered in the app. I'm going to have my header here, main and footer. It doesn't make sense, right? So sometimes component is very important because you might be working with different people and you might want someone to, okay, just work on the header file, work on the footer file, and work on the main file, right? All of us do not have to just work on one file, right? And also because there are a lot of things that can go into the header. And if we want to bring in everything inside one file, that's going to be a lot of code. So component helps in breaking things into pieces. Then you can then bring them together. Okay. And also the header, you can use the header in different web pages. Like just imagine a very complex project, right? Web pages, a lot of web pages. There are some pages you might want the header. There are some pages you might not want the header, right? But so since we have a separate file for header, I might decide to bring it into some pages or not. So it just helps you to control things, right? I'm just going to illustrate that quickly. So what do we have for header was the logo. So I'm just going to take it, bring it in to where we have the header file. I'm going to import the logo, just like we imported it to our app.js. I'm going to do the same thing here. But this time around, my header is in the component folder. It's not directly in the image, so I have to search for it. I have to take the right path to it, right? Is in the component, no, it's not there. Is in the image, right? And that's the name of the logo. So there we have it. Okay. And in my app.js, I will not need the logo again because it's already in my header file. Okay. And right here, I will not need this header anymore. Right. So let's see what we have. Normally, this would not show. Yeah. So we don't have the logo there. Why? Because we have to import that component into the app.js. We want it in the app.js, so we have to import it in. Right. So how do I import it? That's why we have what we call export default header. So I can import it to any file that I want. So I want it here. So I would have to import it just like I import other files, just like I import CSS. Right. So I have to import it here. I'm going to use the import. I'm going to import header from location. Where is it located? Component slash header. And since I've imported it here, I can then use it right here. This is how I'm going to use it. Right. So see how we have the format for components, right? It's different from HTML tag, right? It's a little different from it. So now I've imported it in. I can now have my logo showing up in my web page. Okay. So that's how we use components. I mean, I'm able to have a separate file for header here, and I can do anything regarding header all in here, right? Responsiveness, everything, just everything all about header. And I can take it into any file wherever I want it, just like I brought it into the app.js. Okay. And let me just do a quick one for the footer too. So I'm just going to go to the component folder where I have my component. I'm going to create a component for footer. I'm going to do the same thing. Remember my snippet. Okay. And I was going to use this. And what do I have for footer here? I just have this. I can take that off and use it right here. Right. Let's save that. And in my app.js, I will not need this, but I'll need the footer components there. In doing that, I have my footer component imported for me already. I mean, that snippet is just good. Once I type the component, it just locates where the component is and populates for me. I like the snippet. Okay, so let's see what we're going to have now. You can see I have my icon there. the Facebook icon. And if I take this off, it's not there, right? So that's how components work. And it's very good that we have components so that you can break the things, you can break a large file code, large code into pieces and reusable components, right? Because I can use this anywhere I want. I can want my footer maybe in the about page, I'll then use it. Maybe in the main page, I'll then use the header, the footer. Maybe in another page, I want only the header, I could use it, right? So that's the beauty of components. Okay, so I hope we all understand that. And the next thing I want to talk about is React props. And to explain props, I'm going to make a little bit of changes. I'm just going to take this off, footer, and we are left with the header. The React props is just it's like property, like what you pass to a component, right? Maybe a variable, yeah, that you pass to the component. So let's just take for example. Remember, this is a function. Okay, and by the way, this is a functional component. Remember, function. We have two types of components in React. We have a class component and we have the function component, right? So, but we are working with function components right now. And remember when we talk about functions, this is example of a function. Function header, this is the name of the function with this, remember? And you have to return something. Okay. So it's the same thing that's happening here. Function, this is a function, right? But in this function, we are mixing JavaScript with HTML, which is JSX. We are using JSX. Okay. So I want to illustrate the props. Okay. Just like we have in a function, let's have a variable. Let's say let's name equal to grades, right? And let x equal to 100, a number, right? And let me do a little bit of computation here. Simple computation. My name is okay, a variable, and my page is right. So I could just use this here, name, right? And x right there in the div, right? So this is where I have this curly bracket, I can have any JavaScript computation right here, okay, with my content for the HTML. So where I have the curly braces here, I can have any computation, JavaScript computation. So let's see what we're going to have here. My name is Grace and my age is 100, right? And the header that we didn't take off, right? Okay. So even if I want to do something like this, little bit of computation, let me add 600. 600 plus 100, 700. So anything can happen right here. Okay. So to explain props, prop is like passing the variables, right, to a component. So I'm going to change this header to display. I'm going to call it display component. Just renaming it from header to display because I want it to display my output. Nothing serious. Just take this off. I don't need it again. Likewise, this. Just doing some cleaning so we don't get confused, right? And I'm going to rename this display, right? And in my display, I'm going to change this to display, right? And the export display. No more using header, we're using display now. Okay, so I don't even need the logo again, right? Yeah. So I want to display something. Let me just say my name is, I don't know, there's a variable that's going to come in there, right? And I am this years old, right? Sorry, two is a fragment there. Okay, something is going to come in here, right? So my app.js, I have display. Now I want to pass this. Let's just say text, right? I'm going to pass a name here, and this age, I'm going to pass, yeah. So the text and age are what we call props, properties of the display component. Why? Because it's what we will need right here to complete what we have for the display, right? So what we are saying here is that what we are telling the compiler here is that wherever you see display, right, take the props text and age with it because it will be needed in the file for display, right? So this is what we call props. Now, because I have this going to the display file with me, what do we have in the display file? My name is, you don't know, we can bring it in here. And how do we bring in props? We use the props word, and you can then say props dot, what's the first thing? Text, that's the name. And right here, I can say props dot page, right, name and age. Let's see, I'm going to comment out the first one. Okay, my name is Grace and I am 100 years old, right? So we successfully display what we have on the display file, display component file, right? But where the props comes from, remember that props was passed down here. So when do we use props? Prop is when you have a variable, maybe somewhere, right, where the component is, and you want that variable to be used also in the component file. So you can pass it to the component where you call it. Because it's like you calling this right here in the app.js. And I have this variable right here in the app.js file. But I want it to be used in the display file too, right? So I pass it as props. Okay. And meanwhile, I can also pass direct information, direct variables. Let's just say like this. I'm going to call this Sandy, and the X, I'm going to use a number, let's say 90, right? We're going to have display. My name is Sandy and I'm 90 years old. Okay, just break it a little. So that does not, okay, we can use that. I don't know why it's not working. But anyways, we can simply, I think I have an error somewhere, so I'm just going to take this back to how it was before. Okay. Okay. So I could decide to just use a div rather than a thing. Just put it in a div so that I can have that break up in a block, right? My name is Sandy and I'm 90 years old. It displays whatever is in the display component. And likewise this will still display. My name is Grace and my age is 700, right? I can have any computation, even right here, props.h, I could decide props.h divided by 2, right? Let's say 2. So everything is divided. Anything that goes there is divided by 2. So what I'm trying to say is that once there's something within these curly braces, that's a JavaScript interaction going on there, right? JavaScript interaction going on there. And you can use it as any other JavaScript logic for any JavaScript logical statement. Okay, so I hope I was able to explain React props. To refresh again, to emphasize again, this is what we call props. Props are the things we pass to the component, right? Because we will need it in the component file. So whatever we pass to the component is what we call props. And you can see how I use it right here. Okay, so let's do a little bit of the structuring. I could just use it directly here, text. I know what I'm expecting, page, right? So I don't need to use props or text anymore. I could just use it directly here, right? That's what we call restructuring. I don't want to be repeating props.text, props.h. So I take away the props and I just bring it in, the text and the h. But look at what I did here. Can you see the extra curly braces around it? Okay, this was how it was before. This is the normal way if you want to use the props. But if you want to destructure, right? So this is it, the extra curly braces in there. And it's still going to work perfectly well. Okay, so that's React props. Next thing I want to do is the state. And to show you how the state works, I want to use this to illustrate state. Right, okay, so a little bit of explanation about state. State is, for example, if you have a variable that you want it to be changing when you do something, right? So let's just say, for example, Sandy, I want Sandy, when I do something, I want it to change to another name. I do something, I want it to change to another name. It could be numbers, right? Anything, a variable that I want it to keep changing. I'm going to use this to illustrate. And if you can see this, something is changing. Hello World React. When it clicks on another button, Hello World Home, clicks on another button, Hello World React Redux. So something happens when it clicks on button. The hello world is not changing. It's just the React Home and React Redux that's changing. Right. So I'm just going to, that's what we use state for. And I'm going to use the concept here to to explain to you. I'm going to try to do this. I'm not going to bring in the image, but just I'm going to do this and you can see how state comes into play and how we trigger to update the state of a variable. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning. I'm going to clean this off. Right. Okay. Okay, so what do we have? The display. Okay. So to bring in the state, for our functional component, we are going to use what we call React hooks. Okay, and to do that, we are going to I'm going to show an example of how to use the React hooks. Okay, and this is it. This is the format for the React hooks. It's going to like this, course state, right? Set state, right? And a comma here. Use state initial state. So this is the format to use what we call React hooks, which it's what we are going to use to handle the state of our application. You notice something just pop up here from React, which is because we triggered the use state function there. So this is what it should be like. The state could be like a variable, right? For anything, a number. The state of it. The set state is what we use to make updates to the state, right? And the use state, initial state, the initial variable we are going to start with before we start making changes, right? So I'm going to use the display component created before to illustrate this, okay? And I'm going to just create a React hooks, just like what we have above. I'm going to, this is just like the general format for it. So I'm going to call this skills. I mean, the state that's going to change, look at here. What is the state that's going to change? The React, the hem, and the React Redux is the state that's changing there, right? So I'm going to set up by using the first, creating a React hooks, creating a state called skills, following the pattern, comma, get skills, and use state. This is the pattern that I showed above. The initial state should be React, right? Want it to be React. That should be the initial state. The first thing. Okay. And next, what we're going to do now is to bring this in as a props. And I'm going to the prop name, I'm going to call it take. Remember how we bring in props? Skills. Right. So this is the skills. I'm going to I use it as props, the name take. And that means you're going to need it here, right? So take. And that's what we're going to use here. We're going to change this to hello world, the text, which is take. Remember how we use props? Okay, that's what's going to be on the display. Right. Skills is from here. It says skills and the initial is React. So let's see what we have on the browser. Hello world, React. Remember the initial state is React. We have not done anything. We don't have any button here to make changes. So the initial state, just like we mentioned that it should be React. That's what we have there. The React was passed, which is the value for the skills, right? The initial state for the skill was passed down here to the take, right, as props. And that's what we used right here in our display component. Okay, so but we want this to be changing. So to do that, we would need buttons, right, to trigger changes. Right. So I'm going to use button tab, three buttons, so to say. No, where's that? Okay, so the first one is called React. The second one is what we call Helm. The third one is React Redux. Just to illustrate, assuming it was Helm that was here, would have been our initial that Helm, right? So the buttons we just added, it's shown there. Okay, so I just want to do a little bit of styling here just to make my work fine. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to use a div right here. For my, okay, let me style this class Class name. Remember we use class name buttons, right? To style my buttons. And I want it to be centered. So I'm going to use a div here. Copy everything. It's a general div for everything, right? Rearrange this. Right. So the general div, I'm going to call it, give it a class name, app styling, right? Anything next. I'm going to style this my app CSS. Okay. App styling, and I want it to be centered. So I would want to use position fix, and next I'm going to use left 50%. Next thing, top 50%. Next thing should be transform, translate, plus 50%, minus 50%. Okay, that should push it to the center. Why? What is missing? I want to save this. So I didn't save this. Okay, so that's at the center. Right, everything is now at the center. So a little bit of still to add a beauty to it. Let me make it the font size. Font size of 25 pixel. I want the color font size. And the color should be white. See. Okay. And I want to work on the buttons now. The buttons, I want the buttons to have that is the div. Let me target the buttons in the div. I want it to have a little bit of padding of 1 EM each, right? And I don't like the border I'm seeing there. I'm going to remove the border. And what else? Let's see what we have there. Okay, not bad. Let me give a little bit of space. I'll give a margin, right? 10 pixel. They can just spread out. Right. Okay, so just a little bit of adding top. I can have a little space away from display. Okay, this is not bad. This is okay. Okay, so the idea is once I click React, this should change. I click the Elm, this should change. The React window should change. So let me, okay. Okay, so the display, I could decide to add a little bit of styling here. Okay, let me use span so that you can see the changes that's happening to that particular page. Oh, sorry, span, right? I'm going to use text here. Do the same thing, but now I want to start the span. Okay, so I could use the span directly here, but let me just give it a class name that won't mix things up. I'll call it take. Right. So in the app CSS, if you notice, I'm using a general one CSS for my styling, which is because what I'm doing is not much, but in bigger projects, in your components, right, you would want to have styling for the header separately, footer separately, right? You don't want to put everything inside one style sheet, inside one app.css styling, and you have to be going through around it to find your header styling, your footer styling inside one file. So what is usually done is to separate it out, right? I could just create a folder for maybe footer, and in that footer, I'm going to put my footer components there and the style sheet, right? Same for the header, and I will not have to use one style sheet for everything. But in this case, since the styling, what I'm doing is not much, I decided to use one style sheet, the app CSS, because everything all comes to the app CSS. So whatever I'm doing recognizes the styling, right? So, and also the app.js file is a higher file in the hierarchy. Look at this, it's what is in the index.js. So the compiler sees it first, everything in the app.js first. It reads everything in the app from the app.js file. Okay, so that's why I'm using the app CSS file. Okay, so I want to continue styling, and it was text that I used in the display, and I can just use through the span. I want the color. I want the color to be. I use brown, blue. I like green. I like green, yellow. I want green, yellow. Yeah. Okay. So I like the color. Okay. So you see, green, yellow, and it's not. I'll make it bold so you can see that very well. So I'm going to use a font with bold and a little bit of space around it. We'll give a margin of margin left. 10 pixels. Okay. Okay, so right now nothing happens because we have not triggered update. Right. So we're going to continue in our app.js. In our app.js, and remember the initial state is okay. What we're going to do now is to work on trying to trigger the update, the set skill, so that you will have updates. We're going to do that on the button, right? So I would have to write some function, right, that would use on the click me, that would use on the buttons rather. I have to write a function that will use on the button that would trigger for us to update the skills to whatever we want. So this is what I'm going to do. And the function, I'm just going to write it here. So first, let's call this handle react. The function is handle react. I'm going to use an arrow function. Just by now you'd have heard of arrow function, simpler way of writing a function. So what I'm going to do here is use the set skills, right? So when I click on React, you should have React, right? We're going to do the same thing for the other. Since you have 3 buttons, we're going to have 3 clicks, right, for each of the buttons. And the second one is for the hem. And when I click on the hem buttons, I should have the hem. Next is the redux. When I click on it, I should have the React redux, right? Okay. But nothing happens. Why? Because we have not attached it to the button. And remember, event handler, listeners, event handlers. Okay, so we have what we call on click. I mean, that's what we are going to do, right, to trigger the update when we click on the button. So on click, we want this to happen. When I click the first button, which is React, I want it to run the function handle React. Same thing for the him. I'm going to run the function handle him. And same thing for this. And I on click, I want it to run the function for handle Redux. Okay, so did we do this right? Let's see. Okay, so the initial state when you refresh should be him. When I clicked on Redux, it changed. When I click on React, it's React. When I click on him, it's him. When I click on Redux, let me refresh this again. So the initial state I just refreshed is aim. Why? Because we set it as, remember we set it as aim here. Yeah. And when you refresh, when someone is seeing it for the first time, the initial state is always aim. Right? But when you click on the buttons, it triggers changes. Right. So I just demonstrated to you how to use state and how to update state. The state is the skill, you update it with the set skills. You could update it maybe when after a few seconds, give us this update. It all depends on the function you're writing, right? For this case, I'm saying when I click on this button, update this, do this. It must not be a button, it could be anything, right? But I've just triggered the set skill method to update what is existing here. Okay, so I hope we all enjoyed what I've done here. And okay, so someone would say, why don't we just, work on this button? I mean, I have so many buttons here. I could decide to have a button component. Yes, a button component. Yes, you can have component for anything. Like the goal is to not repeat, not to repeat your too much code, right? So let me make button component here. How do I do that? As usual, I'm going to create a component called button right here. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is to go to my component and I'm going to create that button component here. Component button.js, right? I'm going to set it up with this. And what do I need here? What I need here is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to the button, right? I mean, the app.js, when it sees this, it goes to here. And what is returned there is button. Just like all we have here. But rather than this, right, we have the button component. Okay. I'm going to bring in props. I mean, this has properties, right? It has something here. It has properties. I'm going to pass it to the button. So what am I going to pass? I could decide to call it handle what do I call it? Click handler, right? Because it's what happens when I click. So I'm going to pass a prop for click handler. What will happen when I click on buttons, right? So I'm going to pass a prop to it, and I'm going to pass the first one, which is handle React. This is props. And what else am I going to pass? This React. So the button text, I want it to be called the string because not a variable. So I want it to be called React. Okay. And button text. Let's see button text. Right, so I just pass a prop to it. And what do I need to do in my button file? I need to bring it in. What's the first one? The first one is what we call click handler. And I'm using the destructuring method, excuse me. We need to type props, right? So what is going to be in between the button? Remember, it's going to be the button text that's going to be there, right? And on click, right? On click, when I click, I should have the click handler of whatever it is. This is it. Remember, I'm using the props that's passed here. Okay, so you've noticed that this went off. This went off because I just introduced only the handle React function. Okay, and remember you have to bring in your button component here, right? Import it here. Okay, what do I have? I have for only React. This is the last file we rendered. This is the initial, remember? Yeah. Okay. So what happened is that, okay, so click handler. This is not the correct spelling. You have to be sure it's the correct spelling of what is passed. See what I passed here. Click handler. That's why that did not work. You have to be sure it's the right spelling too. Your JavaScript is case sensitive, remember? Okay, right, so that changed. So, but I want for not just React, I want for the hem buttons and the redux. So there are better ways to do this. I mean, I could just decide to use one single button, but for our case, I want us to use 3 buttons, so we won't make this very complex. So I'm just going to repeat this, right? But here, I'm going to pass a hem, handle hem here, and the name, right, for the button. Here will be React Redux for the button, and here will be handle Redux. Okay, you can see I still have the same thing we had before, and this still works perfectly. Okay, and we would not need this anymore. Okay, so I just let me introduce what we call. Let me show you what's happening in on the browser. We have what we call React Developer Tools. It helps you to see the changes, what's happening. Okay, so I'm just going to inspect, and I have it installed already. And I would go to components, and you can see what I have there, right? What do I have in my app? I have a display button, I have a button. These are the components I have on my React app, and it's showing there, right? And in my React app, you can see the state, right? Aim is the initial state, the hooks, the state is him. But when I click on React, you can see the state changed. Click on him, state changed, and the React Redux, it changed, right? So you can see the changes. Same thing happens to the display component. You can see how the changes are communicating from the app to the display, the React, I click React Redux, the changes, props, right? So that just shows you that as you are making updates based on the click, the skills here that we pass to displays also, the props here, remember this is a props, it's also changing, and that is what is being rendered because of what we have here. So the React developer tools just help you to see what is happening. Right here, we don't have, okay, the aim, right? This is the button for the first one, which is for the click handler, the aim. You can see that the changes is based on when we go to individual buttons. Okay. Uh, that's just to show you how we can use what we call React developers tool. You can check that online. React developer tool is an extension you can install on Chrome. Right. So you just check online, install that, and you would have it installed as an extension. It's a very useful tool. Okay. I think we're finished here, and okay, that is that for now. I hope this was not overwhelming for you, but well, you're learning something new, and you can always reach out to the mentors if you have challenges. Okay, and I've dropped an assignment for you. The assignment is going to make you go to make you do a little bit of research because I've added a little extra, right? And I remember I added the counter. You need what we call a count for the likes. So you would have to write a state for that because that is changing too, right? So I expect you to go to Google, make research on how you can, you know, uh, do the assignment for where it's challenging, especially the count. I think what I've talked about here is it's what's in the assignment, but I added something extra, and I believe you can do it. And if you still have questions, you need help, feel free to reach out to the mentors. Thank you very much.